it's me, Ingrid INFP. And it is cold outside. It was minus 18 degrees this morning, which is like, I don't think I've ever been in this cold weather, to be honest. Possibly I've been in minus 20 once. I live in the south of Sweden, you could say, or the bottom third of Sweden, you could say. I've never been in minus 30, minus 40 degrees like up there. I don't know what that translates to in Fahrenheit. You'd go do the calculations. But minus 18 degrees and walking to work, I only have a 10 to 15 minute walk to work. And I had trouble breathing. My face was completely numb. My eyes were tearing up. I was completely messed up. And it took me a while to warm myself up. But then it was really sunny the rest of the day. It was sunny, but it was like the air was really cold. And that's the thing, is that when there's clear skies, it's often colder. I don't really know the science behind all that, but maybe one of you guys knows. So I didn't shower this morning. I left it until now, because I came back home and I slept for 3 hours. So I am really messed up. I think there's something to do with my medication. I probably should talk to my doctor, and I went to stop taking antidepressants because I think that by now I've gotten such stability that I'd like to be able to experience some emotion sometimes and not be so tired all the time. Instead, it feels like I'm masking most of the day. I notice sometimes that I'm always smiling, and I'm smiling as like the default, and that can seem a little bit weird at times, always talking like this. I can't stop myself from smiling, which is, I don't know. I mean, it's positive, but at the same time, I'd like to be able to experience negative emotions as well and get the richness of experience, because I'm kind of in a state of like placidity where everything's fine. And I'm on a pretty low dose of sertraline. I mean, I'm on 50 milligrams, which, you could, I argue, is maybe not the lowest dosage, which would be 25 milligrams, but it's the lowest dosage that a person can be on for a long period of time. But I think there's something that is not quite right, So, but that's a problem for another day. I have had a hard time doing stuff because I've just gone back home and fell asleep. And I recognize this from last year when I got into burnout. But at the same time, it's like I'm not working that hard, so I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I'm in a weird mind space. This morning I came to work, I was happy to be back because I am at my GP clinic every Tuesday. So the rest of the time I'm at psychiatry. And so they took my name off my door, which is understandable because other doctors need to use that room sometimes when I'm away. But when I came there, I'm used to maybe something being displaced or somebody leaving a notebook there or something like that if I've been away. But somebody had been there, and a nursing assistant, she admitted to me that she had done it because I was really frustrated. She had changed everything and put everything in the wrong spot, and and she's like, "Oh, well, look, isn't it neat now? It's so organized and you have so much more space." And the tables needed dusting. And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, thanks." But I like things in the place that I've put them. they're there for a reason. Like I have like this little dance which I do with my patients, kind of a dance. It's not a dance, but it's kind of like a theater performance doing these meetings. And it's kind of like, okay, well, now I'm going to go get the stethoscope, and then I go to this place to get the stethoscope, and everything gets thrown off if things aren't in the right spot. And it's like the ear and the otoscope was by the window now instead of being by where the examination table is, and that throws me off because I need to be able to like quickly snatch up the otoscope and be like, okay, well, check your ears now. But now that's behind my computers, like I have two screens. Now that's behind the computer, I'll forget to look into somebody's ear if I don't see it. And that's why I think that it's something that is a little bit ADHD, which is that if it's not in front of me, I won't remember it, you know? So I have my stethoscope and and I have like so I have the stethoscope on my table, and I have the blood pressure thing on the shelf. And the reason I have the stethoscope there is to remind myself, okay, we need to listen to the heart and the lungs on almost every patient. And if the stethoscope isn't there, then I forget. And that's what happened to me today. I forgot to listen to the heart and lungs on one of my patients because she wasn't there for the heart and lungs. She was there for something different. But usually I listen to the heart and lungs anyway on most of the patients who are looking, who have some other kind of physical issue. Even mental issues, I listen to the heart and lungs. But like I forget it because it's not there. Also, I have my papers behind my computer so that if I need something, I can just like reach over and get some information about some patient I met a few weeks ago. But she put everything into the shelf, and then she took away all of the decorations that I had by the windows, and put that on the shelf. And then I was like, well, but now the shelf doesn't look tidy, And she puts the examination table against the wall, which I don't like because I like to be able to go around the whole examination table so that I can come like do certain things on one side and other things the other side. For example, if I need to give an injection or something like that, I like to be able to come behind the patient who's sitting on the examination table. And I don't want to make the patient like, I don't want to have to move the table every time that I meet the patient. So she's like, yeah, there's so much more space. But I'm like, no, I am not happy about this. Anyway, a lot of you guys have been commenting on my autism video, and I'm grateful for that. Though there is something about I think that some people in the mbti community, this isn't just that video, there are several videos about this. A lot of people in the medical community are into pseudoscience, astrology, numerology, tarot, all these things. And that's fine in itself. But if you're going to be like having more faith in that than in the medical, like in doctors and in medical diagnoses and such, it's kind of, it can be harmful for your health if you don't believe in doctors. I know that the medical system sucks, and I know that things are unjust and unfair, and especially in the US, that things cost a lot of money and are not accessible, and there are many problems with the medical system. A lot of doctors are jerks. There are jerks in any profession, but it's kind of unfortunate if it's a doctor that is a jerk. And a lot of things suck in the medical world, but medicine, to me, is a gift to humanity, that we were able to come up with things that can improve our health and our quality of life and our lifespans so that we can experience more of life. I'm all for it. And yes, I'm biased. I'm a doctor. Obviously, I'm going to be for doctors because I find the subject so fascinating, that like people can heal so much faster and with less pain than before and all sorts of things. But and so I can believe in astrology and tarot and still be a doctor, but I need to believe in doctors in order to be a doctor. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen this profession. So there's this thing where, diagnoses, to get a certain diagnoses, especially in the mental health area, you need to fulfill certain criteria. Or in order to like couple the symptoms with an actual condition, it has to fit certain criteria. Because things are treated differently. And we need these diagnoses. We need the words to explain different concepts. And I mean, that's why we have the mbti to explain different concepts. Like an INFP is just a concept, but we found this concept so useful to us that we incorporate it in our understanding of ourselves and others and of life. But the difference with medical diagnoses is that it is recognized in a medical community internationally. It is people come together in like congresses and like talk about these things on a very official level. And so diagnoses are official. At the same time, I'm not against self-diagnoses. I think that self-diagnosis is very important because accessibility to medical health, mental health is extremely limited, and there are lots of problems with the system. And you know yourself best. But in order to get actual accommodations from the government, from the state, from different authorities, you need to have a medical diagnosis. And I'm not the one who decides what the diagnosis is. Like, it has to fulfill the criteria. And the criteria are decided by a whole group of people that are way above my head. So I need to follow the latest diagnostic criteria. I have no choice in that. I must follow the criteria. I cannot just decide that somebody has this because I feel like it, I have to follow certain regulations. And yes, these the diagnoses change. I mean, hysteria used to be a thing. It used to be a medical diagnosis. There are medical diagnoses that we don't use anymore for different reasons. For example, Asperger's syndrome does not exist anymore. Rather, it's autism is placed in terms of a spectrum. And that's because Asperger's was, I think, a Nazi who experimented on children. So that's why we don't talk about him anymore. But some people who got the diagnosis Asperger's, they, like back in the day, they still use that word to describe themselves because that's the diagnosis that they got at the time. But that is not a diagnosis that I am able to set anymore. So diagnoses change, and especially in the mental health community, like the mental health organizations, the psychiatric associations. But classifications of other diseases also change all the time. For example, asthma has just changed its classifications, and the treatments for these different classifications have changed, because now we have better inhalators for asthma than we did before. And now we have a better understanding of how asthma works than before. So diagnoses change and ebb and flow. What's different? So the reason I can't put autism diagnosis on anybody, and I can't put a ADHD diagnosis on anybody. That's not the point. I can't, like, I think I'm self-diagnosing as autistic, because at this point I have done so much research. For the past 6 months, I have I've been basically watching one cold video and one neurodiversity video every day for the past 6 months. And these videos are often around a half hour long each, at least for the cold ones. So I have researched my stuff. It's not like I just saw a video on TikTok and I was like, oh, I think that I might have some trauma because I forgot a person's birthday or something. People invent all sorts of things. They aren't medical professionals. I am a medical professional. I need to use these diagnoses in order to communicate with authorities. And this is something that I do every day at my job. I'm always communicating with authorities, whether by calling them or by writing up sick leaves papers or other kinds of official documents. I spend a lot of my day doing that, and because I'm a GP, and so it's basically my task to write a lot of these compared to other doctors who do less of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of that because I'm the one who's writing the sick leaves most of the time, unless somebody has been through an operation or something. I write a lot of papers to authorities, and they need a diagnosis often in order to take a person seriously when they apply for some kind of accommodation or some kind of insurance money or something else. I need to put a diagnosis. And sometimes that diagnosis is just pain in the leg. But these places need a doctor to write that this person has pain in the leg in order for them to understand. They might not agree, and they might decide not to give the money anyway, but that's their problem. That's not mine. My work is to explain my medical expertise and what my judgment as a medical professional is on this person and this person's physical or mental health, and argue my case kind of so that a layman, it's a layman from the government, a person who is not medically trained can understand. I write referrals all the time, and referrals are from doctor to doctor, so I can speak in a certain manner where the other doctor will understand. Sometimes they'll say, no, we won't take this patient, and then that sucks for me, but it's it's not because I wrote it in a bad language that's it's not getting accepted. But I need to explain things to a layman. And the way that I do that is there's something that I learned in Swedish medical school, which, is different probably in other countries. But I think that the concept is pretty much the same. It's called the DFA chain. D for diagnosis, F for function impairment, A for activity limitation, you could say. So D, you need to put a diagnosis on the paper, on the sick leave. F is functional impairment, like what I experience when I examine a patient. For example, this patient cannot feel his legs, and this is a real example. He's a taxi driver, and he can't feel his legs, so he shouldn't drive a taxi, basically, because he's a danger to traffic. So that's the F is that he cannot feel his legs. When I feel him in his back, he has pain in certain areas. When I do the reflexes, he has less reflexes in his legs because he can't feel, or has more reflexes. Anyway, I describe this and I say he has pain every day, he has these things, these problems, these issues. And then the A as activity is this person should not be made to stand up for long periods of time, or to drive for long periods of time, or walk for long periods of time. And by long period of time, I mean, and I write a rough estimate of like a half hour. But I don't know anything about what a taxi driver entails. So I can only speak in my medical language about his health. And sometimes the insurance or the Social Security or stuff agree, and sometimes they don't. And then I need to argue my case again because they don't understand. Once I had a patient who he was missing a leg. He had the leg amputated. And I was like, okay, so you want me to explain to like this authority why you can't work in a physical job? And he was like, yeah. Like I needed to write this out because it doesn't matter unless you're a doctor, apparently. So I had to write, well, this person has no legs, so, well, he has one leg. He doesn't have no legs. But he has one leg, and, I have to argue my case, which kind of sucks because we live in a capitalist society. And so I need to, because then they'll be like, oh, well, if he can just sit on an office job, he'll be fine. And I'll be like, yeah. I want to be nice to people. I don't want people to be working like just for the sake of giving to the system. I mean, sometimes people are like actually are missing a leg, and maybe we shouldn't expect them to be working full time. The taxi driver that I was talking about couldn't feel his legs. The employment office tried to make him work at a grocery store. And I was like, in what grocery store do you not need to walk a lot? Do you not need to lift heavy things? Do you not need to get on your knees? Do you not need to sit for long periods of time at a cashier desk? Well, apparently in the US you have to stand at a cashier desk, which is like really, that's why we have unions. I don't understand why cashiers in the US have to stand up. Like, they can do their job so much, like, the same, and without all the extra pain, by having a chair and being able to sit down. I really don't understand why the US is crazy. Anyway, I kind of drive my socialist agenda by, like, writing sick leaves on people who are sick. I mean, and sometimes it's like, I have to argue, I don't know, I have to talk to authority figures a lot, and that's where diagnoses are good, because they can help in the contact with authorities to give the insurance that you need, or to give the different social programs that there are, or accommodations at work, or that kind of thing. Sometimes you need to have the diagnosis official. Like, nobody in the medical community cares if you're an HSP, or if you're an INFP, or if you're a ESTP. Like, maybe at work they've made you take a MBTI test at some point, and maybe they care about the personality type that you are. But in like the regular world, most people don't care about, most people don't know what MBTI is, and most people, they'll consider it like astrology. Imagine if, you'd be like, oh, I can't go to work today because I'm a Scorpio. And it's like, you can't say that. That's not the issue, and you can say, oh, well, I can't go to, I have trouble with my workplace because I'm a highly sensitive person. You can't say that because, well, first of all, you'll seem crazy. And also, there is no accommodations for a highly sensitive person. There's no accommodation for an INFP. If you want to speak to your boss or to other authorities, you can try doing it without outright saying you have a diagnosis. You can say that because of medical issues or that kind of thing. But it does help if you have like a diagnosis. So that's why I'm seeking a diagnosis. And basically, most of my work is about helping people deal with authorities. And I'm scared of calling authorities all the time. I have a lot of social anxiety around these sorts of things, but it's my job to deal with these authorities. And what is positive is that, so that's why it's so much easier for me to do telephone calls as a doctor than as a regular person, because I am in the position of authority when I'm calling as a doctor. I'm not the person who's giving the money to people, and I'm not the person who's making those decisions, but I am ultimately the highest judge of a person's physical and mental health. And so I can try to advocate for these people. So that was a long video to talk about pretty, medical jargon kind of stuff, I guess. But I think it's important to see that doctors do a lot of things behind the scenes that aren't just the face-to-face with the patient. And there is some, we need to work with the system. Sure, against the system, but at the moment I'm working with the system, trying to get what I can out of it, both for myself and for my patients. But as a medical professional, I can only work with the system. I can try to go against the system in certain ways, but it has to be with a good medical core, a stable ground. I can't just decide to do whatever I want just because I feel like it. It has to be grounded and stuff, because I actually have a medical license, which I can lose if I do things kind of my own way. So I do have to go and check rules and regulations and stuff. And yes, it's a very TE world, the whole thing. But I think that, as an MBTI community, we can't both say that we are not a pseudoscience, that we're not like astrology, and at the same time claim that, like, we can't be of both worlds. Like, we can't be both a pseudoscience and a diagnosis, or we don't fulfill the same function, you know. MBTI is for better understanding of oneself and of others, but it is not recognized as a diagnosis that can actually give you help in official situations with authorities. It isn't either astrology or numerology or things that don't have a coupling in psychology, because personality types has some kind of coupling with psychology. But MBTI is not used in like psychological therapy because it's not recognized by the psychological associations. Even though it can be kind of helpful to people on their mental health journeys. So we need to like know that certain things are for certain things, you know, like certain boxes are good, like to have. Certain boxes are, you know, boxes and labels are there for a reason, because we need to have these concepts in our mind. And the MBTI, those concepts of different types and functions and stuff are there to understand this psychological model to help us understand people. Astrology is a way for people to try to understand why people are different and such. But it is not based on a psychological model. I mean, it's a model of the stars and how the patterns, and it's kind of psychological, but it isn't really based in anything concrete. Well, concrete. It isn't based in anything that is tied to the psychological concepts that we know of. And the diagnoses are also boxes, but these boxes can help us to get the help that we need within the medical sphere. So we can't claim that MBTI is a diagnosis because it isn't recognized by the medical community, and there is no treatment attached to it, and there is no medical help or accommodations from the state from it. You could argue that a lot of diagnoses don't have any accommodations, and that sucks. But yes, these labels and boxes, we don't want to be boxed in, and it's not good. I mean, it's good to have an open mind, and it's not good to be rigid and to victimize yourself because of a certain thing that you have or that you are. But they are useful things, and we need to have words for things, because otherwise we're just like in a murky world, like we go back in time to where like all like people are called lunatics and hysterics, you know. We can't go back to that time. We need to use the words that we have, and one day they'll become obsolete, and then, well, you know, they'll become obsolete. Things change, you know, but then the doctors will also need to change, and so it doesn't change very fast, but it does change, but it's still within a box, you know. We need to have those boxes sometimes. So I don't know what I've been rambling about for half an hour, but it's pretty much about boxes and diagnoses, and MBTI is about boxes as well, but it's different. So that's all I had to say. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.